Looking at prices now, 94 on Brent. Looking at the bond market, yields push in 5%, 520 on a 2-year and 450 on a 10-year. Conversation we're having in the bond market is what is the new normal? Is it the old normal?
Right.
What's the conversation like in the commodity market? What's the new normal for commodity prices given everything you've just told us?
Well, I love the way you talk about it because I think the before and after in terms of we were very bullish and then we sort of took time out this year. We're very bearish in December and we've basically gone back to bullish. So we're not just we're being quite tactical. The before and after is rates. The flow of capital into new oil supply is just not what it was like in the last 30 years. You had cheap money, a lot of productivity. So to answer your question, what that's doing is driving the long-term price, the back end of the curve, up to 80 and north of 80. We think it probably normalized towards $100. And just to sort of give you a bottom-up sense, the companies themselves, if you take capex, dividends, buybacks, debt, and windfall tax in this country, in Europe, you need at least $80 to be able to invest in marginal new oil. That's a fact. We did the analysis, we call it the cash break even. So that's very supportive for the $80. The question we've had a lot today is why 100? Well, when you look at spare capacity of OPEC, over the next few years, the only ones that are going to be able to fill that gap in supply is OPEC. And historically, when spare capacity has fallen to sort of between 5 and 10% of total capacity in the world, that's a risk premium, which I haven't used that term for a very long time in oil, maybe last year briefly, that will drive $20 above the 80 to 100.
So when you talk about OPEC being the big swing factor, we've been hearing a lot that Saudi Arabia and what they decide to produce is really going to determine whether things stay at 100, whether things stay at 90, or whether things stay below. Do you reject that? Do you think that that's sort of a simplistic way of looking at it, and in the near term, they have less control than people give them credit?
Well, it's a question that's very, 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 do they have control? Do they not have control? I think ultimately the Saudis have played their cards very well and done a fantastic job managing the volatility in oil, right? With that in mind, if they're taking a greater share of demand growth, they have a sort of fiduciary duty to make sure they're stabilizing the price. So people talk about an absolute price. I dispute that. I think what they're trying to do is make sure it stays within a range, which by definition means if we see a very cold winter or hurricanes and prices spike very quickly, they'll be managing the upside just as way they're managing the downside. So I've told generalists this morning, put your seatbelts on. It's going to be a very volatile super cycle. It's not going to be a straight line. And therefore, in some ways, I think the bullish factor to that in equities is Saudi can control that range. So generalists don't say, wait, this is way too high octane for me.
So right now, that's the reason why you think it's 100 and not 110, right? You think that that's where they're going to kind of cap it. But what about, say, Russia and the fact that they just banned exports of gasoline and things of that nature? Are there other areas that could kind of go against what we're seeing from Saudi?
I think other areas will be demand. And I think we're in demand discovery. I mean, everyone's got a view. What price does demand? We've looked at historic analysis, and $100 oil is not that expensive. In fact, it's sort of closer to $70 real. Again, before and after, it's higher rates. You've got higher rates, and therefore, what's the real sort of level of normalized price the market, demand, the world can acclimatize to? We don't know. We think 110 to 120 is fine. And therefore, at that price, if we start to see massive demand destruction, we're wrong. That's the point where I suspect Saudi and Russia will have to sort of manage that downside once again.